It's good here.
That's been on there. I put that on there
Maybe
probably 4 or 5 months ago.
Say because we have a big group today, I just want to direct your attention to those.
I feel like I'm just. I am ready, yes. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Town of Griswold Board of Finance to order March 18th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall meeting room. First item on the agenda is the roll call to order.
We have all members present.
Okay, second item on the agenda is public forum. Does anyone wish to speak? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 3, approval of minutes. February 18th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. We'll do them all separately.
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
First and second, any discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. B, February 24th, 2025 special meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number C, March 3rd, 2025 special meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, old business, discussion and possible action on fiscal year 25-26 budget. We have some presentations this evening. We're going to start with 1302 tax collector. Leona?
All right, good evening, everybody. My budget overall at this particular point in time is only 1.01% increase over last year's. The unions had their negotiations or they're ongoing, so that's really the only variable within my budget. The only other thing I can speak to is there was an increase in service contracts and leases of $2,150 over last year. I decreased the advertising by 1,000, meetings and dues by 100. The rest of everything stayed the same outside of the salary. And again, the overall increase from last year to this year is 1.01%.
All right. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to 1303 assessor. For those that have not met him yet, this is Norman Wood, our new assessor.
Good evening. Bill, the budget several times and our increase is in a small percentage only for computer system maintenance and a few minor things like postage in school and that was about it. At this point, I see no further work.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you, Norman. Okay, we're going to move on to 1501 town clerk and another new face, Kelsey McConnell.
Yeah, correct. So for the most part, my budget's staying about the same as last year. Overtime is going down a little bit because it's not a presidential election. I had the meetings and dues increased a little bit just purely, I live further away, so I'd like to stay overnight at the conferences, which Val did not. But other than that, everything else is staying the same.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Kelsey? Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 4102 Senior Center. Lisa?
I'm the same as everybody else.
Another, that's right, another new face. Well, sort of, kind of.
Negotiations, that contract's just about hopefully wrapped up.
And, there was an increase in the, Meals on Wheels drivers due to, minimum wage going up. But overall, that's for nothing more.
What was the percentage increase, did you say?
I do.
Right now, it's at 2.01%,
2.4?
2.01.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
can I go back to town clerk and ask a question?
You sure can.
Was there quite a decrease in health insurance? What was the reason for that?
I believe my assistant took out of the family plan, her son came off, so that's why.
Okay, thank you.
So it's just her and her husband now.
Another reason too is
Oh,
because, sorry, when we were in the budget process, we didn't know who our town clerk was gonna be yet. And we always budget conservatively, and that was the reason.
Okay, everyone all set?
I got a question for, the senior center.
Yep.
I noticed that you have maintenance at 17,000. In 2023, there was only 8,000 budgeted. Last year, was approved for 26, if I'm reading this correctly, 26.5. And you've only used 5,000 of it. Oh, what's the reason for the 17,000?
That is that the contract of the?
Yeah, a lot of it's a maintenance contract we have for the HVAC system. That 5081 number only has one quarter in there, so there's 3 more quarters. That's, I think the maintenance contract's a little over 2,000 a quarter,
Okay.
so that's 8,000 right there a year.
Eric, that 8,000, is that in addition to what's been expended so far?
No, 6 and
Okay.
change.
Okay.
But we had other things like the fire alarm system testing and things like that that we paid since.
Okay.
So those actual numbers are only for the first quarter?
The actual for year to date it's through December 31st, but some bills came in after for like the second quarter.
Yep.
Everyone all set? Okay, we're gonna move on to 4103 contributions. And the Slater Library.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Miko. I came on the board. I'm gonna have Becky pass out these things and then she's gonna speak. She's our head librarian. Do all this. Then I'll just mention a few things about the friends.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, my name is Becky. I have been a resident here for 40 years. Or a little over 40 years, and I started coming to the library with my kids. I've brought foster kids and my grandchildren since then, just to attest to how great the library is. That was all before I started working for them, so we've been at the library about 10 years. And we are so involved with keeping literacy alive in Griswold, and it's a really big thing to push the literacy. It helps children beyond school and learning. It helps them all through their life with vocabulary, grammar, cognitive skills, and all of the above. You can think about how each of your children were affected by the ability to read and how far they went. And I'll leave you just with a little quote that says, it's from Margaret Fuller, "Today a reader, tomorrow a reader."
If you notice, the blue paper that was passed out, this is to bring to the library what we raised this last year. So we've done very well. I'm very pleased about it. We have a fundraising group and, we do a lot of, as Becky has said in her report, a lot of community events, which we have a huge, art show coming up April 12th through the 6th. It's gonna be an open house, a walkthrough, and we have 28 local artists coming. So it'll be the whole library, the top floor and the bottom floor. If they wish to sell their artwork, they can. That's up to them. And then we just booked it, May 31st is our, excuse me, our booking yard sale, which is really gonna be huge. And we're having it at the library this year, not in town hall, which we usually do. So it'll be a little different. Our historical society finally moved out last Thursday. So they're up the street. And we're gonna utilize that room. It is just huge. And we'll be able to have a really big book sale, and the yard sale stuff will still be outside of the library, but right outside. So it'll be really good. Thank you.
So I'm the penny pincher of the library. It's nice to see you all again. We're all getting a year older. Okay, so, my job as the treasurer of the library is to make sure we are, have good policies and procedures in place. We do audit our have our audited financial statements every year to make sure our procedures have checks and balances and our budget's on target, which we are. We're asking for a little bit of an increase this year, but just to give you some background, 80% of our income does come from the town of Griswold, 20% comes from the town of Lisbon, and the rest, no, that means 100. So 60% comes from the town of Griswold, 20% comes from Lisbon, and the other 20% we raise. Some of it comes from contributions from the Friends, and this year I'm happy to say that the board took the bull by its horns, and we have our own development committee of the board. And we are additionally trying to raise money for operations. So the Friends supports all of our special projects, community projects, and repairs to the building, like the roof and the furnace and things. But we need also money to go into our budget to help with the money that the towns give to keep the lights on and buy copy paper and things. So the board decided to give it an attempt, and all of us go out and ask for money. And I'm happy to say that after 3 weeks of work, we've raised about $9,200, which is huge for people who've never asked for money. And we decided to offer small business corporate sponsorships to events. So for example, our library currently has 35 businesses sponsoring that art show. And that's the $9,200, and you get your name in an advertisement and on a poster, so we can write it off as business expense, and we get to help the library. So we're going to try to offer those kinds of additional fundraising activities to get local businesses involved in the library, because believe it or not, many people don't know that we're not 100% funded by the town. And we have to ask for money for donations, and we do have to, as we ask, we get it. So it's been wonderful, and our businesses have been really supportive of the library. So we're asking for a little bit of an increase, mostly for salaries. 100% of our employees are part-time, and mostly all of them are at or just a tad above minimum wage. So every time we get a minimum wage hike, it's a major impact to our budget. And that wages and salaries are the biggest line item for the library. Other than that, it's utilities and insurance. And we put everything out to bid. We never pay the first quote we get, even if it's from a vendor we have. We put insurance out, we put landscaping out, cleaning the library, everything goes out till we can find the lowest bidder for the price. So we do the best we can to use the money and shepherd the money appropriately. Any questions? We'll be happy to answer them.
The visitation, you track that along the years, going up and down.
Yeah, we actually track that month to month. We're required to, and we give those statistics to the state as part of our ability to track. And everybody took a hit during COVID, but after COVID, we find we have been rebuilding, and we have invested some money into more electronic platforms. And we see we have a lot of folks getting books online and utilizing the library that way, using electronic access
or a databases they can only get through the library. But we do have a significant number of people still coming into the library. And we've noticed that more people are coming into the library to use computers, especially folks looking for jobs and looking to build resumes and things like that. So we do have a significant walk-in traffic as well, but we do track that month to month.
Did you see a trend either way?
It's definitely going up, especially since the hit that we took in COVID. We are almost at pre-COVID levels, but along with that, there's also an increase in the electronic. So some people who started using electronic sources to borrow books and get books and read books on their iPad and things, you know, they learned about that during COVID and they're staying with that. So we don't see any decreased usage either way. It's, in fact, it's increasing. Thank you for asking.
Do you, looking at the costs, electronic versus the old school hard,
Yeah.
tangible, books, are the costs similar? Or is it cheaper to go electronic? If you had to, kind of price it out one to one?
Really is not, but I think with the cost of all technology, as it's out longer, I think that'll eventually go down. The hard copies are going up,
Mhm.
but I think as the cost of the electronic copies start coming down, I think more people will use them, and we can change our collection appropriately as the technology costs, of course, decrease.
Right.
Chairman, you're saying numbers are increasing. What's the baseline? I mean, what do we got for numbers? It's easy to say something's increasing, but if we go from 4 to 5, that's increasing.
No,
You know, so what are our numbers?
Or either, we've got, so. I'm saying, okay, so we do have we have actually more books going out and sharing around the community. And as she said, the ebooks, people don't have to walk into the library to use an ebook, but they do need a library card. So they come in and they get it renewed and then they're good for 3 years using tons of ebooks. So that is up. And actual foot traffic in the building, we had 75 today. The couple before we had, almost 100 the other day. We had, it depends on what's going on and what programs are coming in. We have 4 book clubs going on right now. So when they come in, we get lots of interaction and every one of those gets a book. We have the Sewell Street Academy coming in once a week. And they hang out here at our library, getting books and using our facilities.
Becky, today when we had 75, did we have any events?
Today.
No, so we had no events and on a normal day.
What I'm looking at is what percentage of the population are we serving?
How many people live in town?
Well, I mean, okay, what percentage of the population actually use the library on a regular basis? And not foot traffic coming in, like, if I go in there 40 times throughout the year, that's still just me,
Okay.
right? How many people are utilizing those services?
If I were to take the number of library cards that we have out, and I think that's what you're asking, how many people actually have a library card?
No, because I have a library card and I never go there.
Well, then technically you're a user of the library if you have a library card.
Right, but what I'm asking is actually being used, actually going in.
We really can't track that without violation of people's privacy. So I can't go into the database to see whether Teresa Madonna ever used your library card. I can tell you she has one.
Right, but you can tell who's using their library card
I suppose.
because you're scanning it or whatever you're doing with it, right?
So if you'd like us to report that number back to the board's next meeting, we'd be happy to, but off the top of our heads, I'm not gonna guess.
So
Okay.
you wanna know how many people actually came in and used a library
Yeah.
card
In a year or what, 5 years, 2 years?
Well, within the last year, would be nice, just because, for what's being spent, right, what's being asked.
I
And
can't, I
Don't get
don't,
me wrong, I'm for the library, but I just want to be able to see the bang for the buck.
Yeah, yeah.
not sure if we can.
But the other thing you don't,
That.
right, we're gonna have to check. I mean, that might be a violation, but we will check, and you know what, we'll give you all this information that's in the state report, that has all utilization data. Because the other thing is, people who don't have a library card are still coming into the library to
Right.
use the resources of the library, whether it's to find a job online.
Do they log in? Do they, do
No.
you track that?
No,
We track how many people use our computers, yes.
but not if you're the same person that comes in every day of the week, you're counted 5 times then.
Okay.
So I don't think we can get you that. We might be able to tell you how many people have library cards, and how many are out.
So, and I don't want to complicate this, I mean, I think you're a valuable resource to the community. Can you, I would imagine you must have a mechanism to say over the year 2024, we had X number of ebooks that were checked out.
We can definitely tell you that.
We had X number of hard copies that were checked
We
out.
can definitely tell you that.
Comparatively to 2023, we had X number and X number. So certainly we have a baseline comparison as far as overall activity goes.
For ebooks and checking out books.
Yes,
Yeah.
foot traffic, it is what it is because it's not recorded, you know,
Well, it's counted.
it is counted.
We can tell you foot traffic.
You can,
We can tell you in
Okay.
any one day how many people went into the library.
okay,
We can tell you on any one day how many people came to an event
Yeah.
or used the library.
okay,
But we can't tell you, if you came in 5 days, you're counted 5 times.
right.
I think that would be
Right.
good information though,
Right.
too,
Okay,
for us
Yeah,
to
I mean-
just look at.
sure. Would you like us to present it to another meeting or just prepare it in information?
You can just get it to Eric and he can get it to us, as long as you guys are all comfortable with that. I don't see the need for them to come back in.
Happy to do that.
Question on the ebooks. I'm gonna excuse my ignorance and tell you that I haven't been to the library and I do not have a library card. I know. So if I'm gonna check out an ebook, I can do that from the convenience of my own home,
As
correct?
long as you have a library card.
Perfect. But I don't necessarily have to be a Griswold resident then. I do, I can't, so can I check out an ebook from the Waterford Library?
Now we have a
No.
Waterford Library.
So truly you have to either be a resident of either Lisbon or Griswold.
With a library card.
Okay,
You can get other books on interlibrary loan.
okay,
That's a
Hard copy
different,
books.
those are hard copy printed.
Okay.
books.
I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole in that, but I wanted to make sure that we were really truly talking apples to apples and,
Oh, sure.
you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are your budgeted expenses for the next fiscal year?
I think they were submitted, they're on the back of our letter that we submitted to the town.
Not the one I just handed you.
It's the operating.
In the,
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
so Eric, looking around the room, I don't see any other representatives from any other organization.
No,
So,
but all the letters that they submitted are in your. packet.
would you be able to give us including this year? So it'll be 3 additional years, a 4-year look back of, all of the organizations that have, put in for money in the budgetary process and what those amounts were over, the last 4 years?
Sure.
You guys want to just go 4, right? I thought it would just be helpful to be able to kind of
Yeah.
get a, see who's.
4 plus the current year.
I think 3 plus the current year would be fine. I think 4 total. Question?
5641 UCFS, is that a typo or?
No, they always,
Okay, so they asked for $262,000.
I think they base it on a percentage of, care for Griswold residents that are uninsured.
Okay, and, the Day Kimball Healthcare at Home, it doesn't have a, line item number, but what is that for?
There should be a letter in there.
Oh.
They do home visits.
Okay,
They've requested money over the last few years, but because they've never been funded, it always gets taken out.
okay,
Eric, would probably be helpful in that if we had what they asked for and then what they received.
Yeah, that's what I.
Okay, perfect. Okay, if there's no other questions, we're gonna move on to 12:01 Board of Selectmen. Tina?
Everybody. For the most part, the budget is the only two increases. Are the request for a grant writer, part-time grant writer, and, human resources. Given that, I think there's a change on the line for healthcare. Eric?
Well, it was, but then we took it out when originally you would have the full-time grant writer. The property and insurance went up quite a bit. The liability auto and property.
So I have kind of a loaded question for you. Obviously, you put these two positions in the budget, so they were important enough to your board to include them in the budget. Understanding that this is going to be a difficult budget year. How important are these two positions to the board? And if you were only able to choose one, which one would you choose and why?
I'm sorry, the second part of your question?
How important are these positions to the board? And if you're only able to choose one, which one would you choose and why?
They're both important. However, with grant writing, I think that, with the staff and with different departments, I think we've done a fairly good job with, looking at our grant opportunities, applying for them and receiving them, the things that we know we really need. And I think, Eric, you can kind of attest to that. HR director, I can tell you, sitting in the seat this year, HR is a very, very big need. We need to have an HR director. And I don't know if that's something that can be split between in the school and the town. But if I had to choose, it would be an HR director. Do you agree, Rich?
I do.
Mr. Chairman.
The HR director was brought up with the hopes that we could split it so proportionally with the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen. Contractually, make it a one full-time position, but split. Now, I'm not sure how the Board of Ed feels about it. I've never had any conversations with it, but that's what the proposal was.
Okay, so this line item at 52 is a part-time HR, person, correct? Would that be, 2 days or 2.5 days a week?
Yeah, 2 days.
Okay,
Now, on the grant writer, I think the key reason that we put it in, there were numerous requests that were coming in to our board from other committees, commissions. And I guess they had started doing some research on surrounding towns. For example, Plainfield, they have a full-time grant writer, and there were numerous grants that were received. And I think that they felt that Griswold should at least look at that possibility.
Do you know if they ended up paying for their own salary with these grant writings?
Yeah, they do. They can, but it's not always the case. But I think a full-time grant writer, I wouldn't say that that would be necessary.
Tom, you had a question?
Have you had a chance to look into what kind of grants we actually could get in the next year?
On a monthly basis, I know Mario has been very good at looking at grant opportunities.
On a monthly basis, I receive from Congressman Courtney's office a list of grant opportunities that have come up, and I will filter them out for the appropriate department or organization. So I think that we're fairly well informed. I mean, could there be more? Absolutely, but
Gary?
Is there a way that you track that, like when you send them to departments, do they actually do the work, or maybe it's too much work? Is there any way for you to know when you send them out, if somebody actually does anything with that?
I haven't had any response on certain, but Steve, we put that out to the borough, and we both worked on that together, and we just submitted a steep grant together. They
I'm
will
just
typically come out-
wondering if opportunities are lost without knowing that, somebody doesn't have the time to do it.
There could be opportunities that are lost, but I think the big ones, we move forward with them. So.
Couple questions. First couple are regarding the grant writer, second are regarding the HR director. Currently, how many different people on the town side apply for grants?
How many different people?
Is there only one? Are there, do you leave it up to the various departments to be able to apply for grants if they find something that's pertinent? Does it have to, how does it flow? How does it currently work?
I can tell you from my experience at the senior center, and you know this too, we were always applying for the 5310s through DOT. And that's how every vehicle in that senior center was obtained. Okay, so, and we did that with help from Public Works on certain requirements within the grant, but we typically wrote the grant ourselves. Eric, the steep grant, we did the homework, we did the legwork. Lori Sorter and I, we went through the borough, walked the sidewalks to see where the need was. The information went to Mario. Mario wrote the grant and submitted it. The larger grants are typically through Mario, and they go through approval with the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, all right. And with regard to HR duties, who currently has to wear an HR hat for the town?
Our finance director,
Okay, do you wear an HR hat at all?
not because I'm constantly at his doorstep.
Okay, so in a regular week, how many hours a week do you spend on HR?
I would say easily 10,
Okay,
sometimes more.
so a quarter, if not more, of your time every week? All right. How many hours on average do you spend on HR a week?
If I had to say on average. Like, it depends, like lately we're in contract negotiations, so a lot more.
Mhm.
On average throughout the year though, let me say 5 or 6 a week.
Seems like more, Eric.
I don't know. Trying to be conservative.
Thanks.
Cause there's some weeks that we don't have to, I don't have.
Well, you
any-
don't have anything. Some weeks where maybe it's 10 or 15 hours, so kind of balancing it out.
Right.
Especially if, say, for example, we're interviewing for positions that may open up. And you're going through all of the applications and that whole process, that entire process, that's time consuming.
And would your intention be that this person would be responsible for contract negotiations?
Yes.
All right.
Back to the grants. How many grants have been applied for over the last year, and how many have we received?
Okay. Quite a few, Eric. We did the steep. Mario has applied for 2 brownfield grants. And we have received those. Does USDA fall into that?
Yep.
Yeah, USDA, the SIP. But that was a couple of
That's
years
a couple
ago,
years ago,
but, we
but that was
applied-
8.7 million that we got.
Yeah.
Plus a lot of small ones like the last Green Valley.
Yes, Last Green Valley, I applied, for a grant a couple of weeks ago, to help with the community cleanup day on April 26th. They are going to fund us $500 towards supplies. So I did reach out for that and they were very good to us.
Richard, do you have something on
I
that?
just wanted to add that the housing authority, gets grants too. Where anybody goes up Taylor Hill by McCluggage Manor can see, we're in the final stages of a $2 million grant remodeling all those 30 units.
My concern is just that we're not getting what we could be getting,
Understood.
and that's, I think, is to be holding us back, and it's pretty affecting our bottom line.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, and this may or may not be the right time to talk about it, but I just do want to mention that we've talked about an HR director many years. And the years that it becomes super critical and, or at the forefront of folks' minds is when we have an issue or a lawsuit or something that we have to deal with as a town. It's been sort of quiet lately. You've created a sort of a pattern of asking groups of people to put together a policy or explore something with a subcommittee. Do you think that it would be appropriate to ask the government budget and the Board of Ed to put a couple people together to see if we could share an HR director?
That would be a conversation for another
Okay,
day.
I'm planting the seed.
Go ahead. Yes.
The idea eventually, we've talked about before, is having a combined HR director. What we thought this year, we know the Board of Ed already has their budget set. We don't want to put pressure on them to do it. But our thinking is we could hire someone now to work part-time, work a couple days a week at the town hall if this were to go through, with the hopes of maybe next year, when they put their budget together, maybe we could have a combined position. It's not that we're thinking, yes, we're gonna force them, because I don't want it to look
No.
like that.
Right.
We're just gonna hire someone
Right.
here, and then hopefully, if they have the need and the want, we can have one person kind of handle both.
No, I agree with you, Gail. I think
And-
that for the
Yeah.
conversations certainly should be.
And the other question that I have for Eric, if I may, would it be a better combination, a more efficient combination to look for other small towns that might want to share an HR director with us?
That's a
Rather
possibility as
than,
well.
because Board of Ed, they're a different animal, their employees are a different animal. Whereas the town hall in one town and town hall in another town might be more similar with more similar issues and problems. And a more similar skill set. So, that's also something that I think we need to look at.
We'll put that we can put that on our agenda too for our next meeting.
The other thing that I find concerning too, one of the reasons that I think it's important is that you really need to know what the law is. I'm not up on those types of things, and Eric, I think, you'd have to admit that it's hard to keep up on, when the laws change, and an HR person would know what you can and what you can't do.
Would you expect the HR person to effectively reduce the amount of your calls to your labor attorney on issues?
I can see where it would help, absolutely. Yeah. So there could be some savings there.
Is this budgeted amount for a full-time or part-time HR director?
Wilson? Thank you.
Thank you.
1701 legal.
For legal, we kept everything the same as the current year. Probate court typically goes up a little every year. That's what we pay for the Norwich probate court. But, other than that, everything stayed the same.
And this legal is separate from the school, or is it all combined?
Right, no, it's just the
Separate.
town. And most of the town council comes from things like, the P and Z and inland wetlands. A lot of those issues get run through the attorney.
What's that?
Your actual, is that 31,000? Are you expecting to see full amount being used this year?
With negotiations going on right now, I would expect legal to probably come in around budgeted, and for town council, I mean, all depends. Once spring ramps up, they may be more, town council issues with more building and things like that.
We go out to bid on the town council.
We haven't in a few years.
And if we're all set, we're gonna move on. Okay, 4B, update and discussion on bonding projects.
For the sewer project, they installed the pump station, just the concrete portion of it. We're still waiting on all the electrical components. But that's gonna be wrapped up sometime this year. The water, the engineers expect the permit to be issued the middle of April, so they can start that from DOT. Right now, it's in a public comment period. Once that's up, they'll be able to issue the permit. They expect it to be around the third week of April, and then you'll see that starting. Other than that, that's pretty much all that's going on with it.
A 4C, update from Recreation Budget Subcommittee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Tom and I have, had put together, a rough skeleton, of the policy. We gave copies of it to yourself and Eric. Eric got back to us with, some, recommended language yesterday, and, I've also talked to Ryan Aubin, that we're putting this together. So once we, meld everything together, we're gonna send it to Ryan Aubin. So I think that we should have it ready for the next meeting.
Excellent.
Could you, if the next meeting is a special meeting, could you put that on the agenda
Yes.
so that we can deal with it?
Okay, 4D, discussion regarding ongoing accounting reconciliation issues with the Board of Ed. Last week we had, our monthly meeting, Deb, Eric and I. Deb and Eric have started to meet, actually the week before, we meet to kind of just go over anything before our meeting. I'm trying to recall, I think there might have been one or two minor little things that needed to be done. They were all done, corrected before our meeting, and I don't have anything to report this month
Wonderful.
on that. So that is a good thing. 5A, new business, update from Superintendent of Bristol Public School. Sean?
In your packets, you have a letter from me. I'd like to focus my time this evening on the financial forecast. As I've mentioned in the past, we present monthly financial forecast of the Board of Education. What you have in front of you is a summary page of a 13-page document that feeds into that page. The full document is online. As has been our approach, we do a worst case scenario, and this is in fact a worst case scenario. It's a bit alarming at this point in time, but we want to walk you through it if you have any questions. This is due in part to unanticipated students who have entered our district that we didn't know that was coming to our district after the school year has started. That started in October. It's an unusually high number of students with high needs and significant outplacement costs. We have been on a hard freeze since November and have been closely monitoring expenditures. We are, of course, we're aiming to mitigate that deficit by cost containment, and we are anticipating more money from excess costs. I am joined this evening by members of the central office team, Glenn, Deb, and Chris, to answer your questions. And lastly, while this may seem alarming, we are committed to mitigating that.
If the board is okay, I'm gonna begin with a few questions. So, and just so I'm reading this, and you and I had a conversation on this because I wasn't quite clear with what it was that I was looking at. So, as you indicated, I suspect that there was quite a few pages of backup material that this then, fed off of. Right now, you are looking at a projected worst case scenario deficit of, am I correct, $532,767.72?
Yes.
Okay. So is that solely as a result of special ed costs?
I would say 95%. We had approximately, and I do have our director of student services, 9 students since October who have entered our district, either by moving in,
Okay.
and or by what we call DCF placement, and we're
Okay.
responsible for their education. And I want to be clear to the Board of Finance and the public, we care about all of our students. So this is not a sort of casting a negative shadow on students that have exceptionalities. But the law is if they move into our district with a plan and or an outplacement plan, or the state of Connecticut through DCF places them in our district, we are responsible for not just the educational costs, but also the transportation costs.
Okay, so before we jump into the 95%, can we talk briefly about the 5% of cost overruns?
There are some overruns and overtime with custodial. I despise weather patterns, but we've had a number of storms that have occurred on the weekends, and we have to make sure that the campus is safe for everybody to use, not just faculty and staff during the week, but also people that use the facilities on the weekend. That's been something that's running a little bit high.
Okay.
We also know that some other areas have come in higher than expected. With respect to sometimes sublines fluctuate. If you have, for instance, a long-term absence that you didn't anticipate, that could run a substitute line higher than expected. So that is probably the 5%, but the majority of this red area is due in fact unanticipated expenses of students.
All right, I have one more question about that. I'm sorry.
Sure.
So in a situation where you have a long-term vacancy
Yes, sir.
and you've got to fill it with a sub, isn't that line item already filled because you budgeted for that position to be filled when you went through the regular budget process? So now when you have a vacancy,
I may defer to Deb or Glenn to help me,
Okay.
just so that I'm clear. So I guess the way that we have a full-time employee who has a number of sick days and they go
Okay.
out and they.
Those type, all right. I was thinking you meant in terms of like, hey, we haven't been able to hire for
No.
position A, so we've been filling it with a long-term sub, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, that should have been filled with the regular budget.
Good question.
Okay.
So what we'd have to do is pay the employee who's on leave,
Mhm.
oftentimes
Yep.
FMLA. leave,
Okay,
And then pay the sub.
Okay. okay. And now with regard, I guess, to the 95%,
Yes,
can I go right to?
absolutely.
Okay,
We have the
Chris,
estimate.
can you break down the 95% and how did we get from where we were when we budgeted and everybody thought everything was good to where we are now?
So since middle of October, I can account for approximately $530,000 that we did not expect to have to expend. We had 3 students that moved to Griswold. Those 3 all happened to come in the months of January and February, and they were placed at an out-of-district placement that costs approximately around $100,000 in tuition. Luckily, those 3 students didn't increase our transportation costs because we already have buses that are heading that way. We had another student who was medically placed, and because they're medically placed residential, we have to pay the educational services costs. And that's about a 6-month stay, at approximately $60,000 in tuition for the educational component. We also have a series of students since October that Griswold is their nexus district, so the biological family has ties to this community in some manner, but they're placed in a foster home in another town. All of them just so happen to be special education students, so that town where the students are attending school sends us the bill for their educational services.
So that's like mom or dad live in Griswold, but maybe
Correct.
DCF put them with a temporary foster family somewhere else and
Correct.
Griswold has to pay for that?
Yep, correct. And because of this, and we would have done this anyway, but we are paying close attention to all of the students that we place. So we did bring a student back from an out-of-district placement in March because they were demonstrating those readiness skills to return. We have another meeting tomorrow where that's part of what we're considering. We're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can to make sure that the students that we're placing out truly still need that level of intervention, and we can't replicate services here in Griswold.
Thank you.
Well,
Rob?
How many do we have in that instance?
in terms of DCF,
Yeah,
there are 3,
3 additional.
correct.
So you got 3 students moved into Griswold, 1 was
We have
medically
1,
placed.
2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that were unaccounted for due to either the medical hospitalization, the change in residence, so the family actually moved to town, and then 3 that are our responsibility because of DCF placement with the cost. We have many more DCF students, they just are regular education students, so there's no cost for regular education placed students. The other component to this, that I forgot to mention, EastCon, which is the regional educational services center where many students attend, because of their financial difficulties, increased their tuition costs on January 3rd by 15%. And they sent every district a bill to make up for that. So for our charge for this school year, that was an additional $73,302 that we did not anticipate needing to spend. So that's also part of that pot of money.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Are you saying that EastCon increased by 15% retroactive to the beginning of the school year?
No, they started it based on, I think it was January 3rd is the date they used. So we had to pay a supplemental bill. EastCon bills students in August or whatever their first day of entry is for the dates of attendance through the end of the school year. So they did a prorated 15% based on the number of days of the school year remaining.
And is this number, this 532, is that net after all the extra reimbursements come in?
Except for the additional excess cost reimbursement that the governor just signed, which I think we're expecting to get in April.
And what would you expect that to be?
I believe that's 205,000.
So the the net would be down around 320
Assuming that check comes in the mail, like.
Correct.
expecting it to.
in the mail.
Gary?
Is that Eastcon increase, is that foreseeable or is that just come every once in a while?
That's unusual.
That's never, it's unprecedented. There was a lot of, angst and, local districts made their displeasure known with this unexpected tuition increase. It was in some of the local papers because any town that had students placed there, whether it was magnet school tuition, special education tuition, we all received a 15% increase for our tuition costs. So when we're thinking about the costs for next school year, their typical increase, which is a 3 or 4%, is now really an 18 or 19% over what we had expected to pay this year.
And did they have a reason?
There were $6 million in deficit, and they were potentially financing their payroll. So this was.
$6 million in deficit?
Speaking of it, but, yeah, it was a bad situation.
The reason for $6 million in deficit, you said was what?
Mismanagement, yeah.
Mismanagement?
So not that this it directly reflects our charge. But certainly depending on where everything kind of lands, it could come in that direction. So just question regarding the Eastcon, and that's what I mean here. That doesn't really fall under our charge. I would assume you guys contract with Eastcon, so aren't you locked into pricing, or is there a provision within that contract that allows them to arbitrarily change what they're charging you?
It's vague, and there's actually some current, I guess, local movement in the legislation to look at how out-of-district placements build their fee structure so that there is additional equity, because our fear is if Eastcon's base tuition for a student in an ABA program, applied behavior analysis, a student with autism, is now potentially 140,000, and Learn, who is the comparable other place to potentially place a student, their base is 90. Are they going to then say, well, if Eastcon can charge 140, let's re-examine our fee structure? So there's a lot of forces at play here to examine the costs of educating special education students in clinical settings, because the ripple effects would be disastrous to local towns.
Sure. I get it. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of astounded that, you sign, you say, okay, here's what you're going to pay, that then they just have the ability to carte blanche change that value, and you don't have any recourse. Go ahead, Deb.
Eastcon, before they went to any districts, they did go to the State Department first, asking if the state could help them out, and the state told them they had to go back, figure it out, and go to the districts that you provide service to.
Wow.
So they did try to do it a different way. It just didn't.
How often do you negotiate the contract with Eastcon?
It's not like a blanket contract. So every time we have a student, they have almost like the rate chart that we put out each year that says we charge X number for a one-to-one, X amount of dollars for counseling services. So they look at the student we have, the IEP that we're proposing, and the charges are based on what's in the IEP.
So if you don't have an umbrella contract with them, you're locked in and there's no way out.
I mean, well, through the PPT, you can place students in other programs.
But if you had a clause in the contract that said that if they had, an increase of more than X in any given year, that
So
you
it's
could
not-
go to an alternate vendor for all of your students.
Yep, the contract isn't the contract that we think of in a legal sense. Because Eastcon is a regional educational service center, we don't need a contract with them, because they are essentially approved through the State Department of Education.
Oh.
So we would have if, Mother Hubbard opened a school somewhere and wanted to accept students from Griswold, we would have to have a contract with her because she's not a verified educational facility. Since EastCon is approved through the state, it's essentially EastCon, by accepting our students, is agreeing to provide the services as identified in the IEP, following the rate sheet. In theory, it's all kind of a handshake, right? So they put this rate sheet out a year ahead, and there's an agreement that you would follow the rate sheet.
But there's no downside to them for mismanaging and charging the towns.
Correct.
And so they're being rewarded by mismanaging and saying, well, the towns will have to make up the difference. So I guess I'm asking, why isn't there a better look-see at what we're gonna do with our contracts with them, so that there can be a trigger that allows us to go to an alternate vendor if mismanagement continues?
I think part of the problem is they run the best autism program in the state. So where our hands are tied often in terms of having an alternative vendor to place certain students.
And the vendors there aren't many for some of these programs. We wish there were. To your point, Gail, I think you make a very valid point, duly noted. But it's not like they're all close by, and then it triggers the whole notion of transportation. We don't want to be sending kids to New Haven because that would increase transportation multifold. So believe it or not, even though it's 30 minutes out, we do have a transportation, like Chris said, a bus that goes up there that brings students. So, and we do know, regardless of the lake mismanagement, it is a good program.
And there's no multiple town consortiums who are trying to create something that would be an alternative to EastCon?
There are options. There's one that's on Ocean Avenue in New London, which, being very familiar with New London, is not easy to get to. I would argue that program is comparable in terms of price, but transportation is going to probably run you even more, because you have to not only get off the highway, you have to go into the heart of New London. I mean, it's a mile from Ocean Beach. So that traffic is going to be costly.
Well, I just want to share my concern
Absolutely.
that we could be talking about this again next year and the year after if there isn't some sort of boundaries set for mismanagement behavior.
And I wish the state of Connecticut would allow the money to follow the child from district to district, so it wouldn't put the onus on a local municipality.
Thank you.
Because this is extreme. I've been in this role for 9 years. I've never had this many students at this cost come into town unexpectedly. So this is definitely an outlier.
Is there
Does
any,
the rate sheet you received in October say that the rates expire January 3rd?
No, it's not. None of these are that official or binding. It's
So they can change the rates anytime they want.
essentially,
But they never have.
right.
Right.
the mismanagement, was there any suspected criminality, or is that still being investigated?
So I guess I want to be, when I said mismanagement, I was kind of generalizing the newspaper
Okay.
articles I read.
Okay.
If you could easily Google it and it all comes up.
I
There's a lot,
will.
and every district that has students there is not pleased with this, and there,
Okay.
EastCon is well aware of the predicament. And, we are looking at the students that we have there, and if there are students that can receive the same level of service at a different cost, that's something we'll look at.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're going to move on to 5B, update on road study from Director of Public Works. Todd?
I just want to do somewhat of a quick presentation. I don't think all the members of the finance have been through a full road study presentation from data. Taken some of the stuff from their presentation the last time and added some data on historic funding. since 2016 and our road rating since 2016. So that we can have a look at what we have. The first page came out of the study after they did it in 2021. It was presented late in 2022. But the chart on the middle of the page basically shows that our funding should be $1 million to keep our roads in the condition they are. Additional funding is needed to improve the rating overall. It also tells you on the left with that pie chart, how we break up what we do with our roads. So it covers routine maintenance, preventative maintenance, minor rehabilitation, and major rehabilitation. The next page was part of their original presentation, which says the next steps for capital planning and prioritizing. Present the findings, define the needs, and come up with a multi-year plan. For the capital improvement planning timeline, you can see on the bottom, what we follow there. The third page shows you the projected conditions, and it's an overall analysis of our road structure. This was projected as of 22, so the end of the year in 2022. It shows you categories of repair on the left, and it shows you the estimated cost on the right. So we are about $12.25 million to update all the roads to 100%. Their concluding remarks were a comprehensive inventory has been created for the town maintained roads, the condition and the most effective way to prioritize the maintenance and repairs. Designed to better manage limited dollars allocated to road work in town and capable of assessing the different types of repair strategies necessary to maximize the life cycle of the roads. So many years ago, I'm gonna say 20 years ago, I don't know, Scott, you might have been on the board, you might not have been.
Not 20 years ago. I'm a dinosaur, but not that old.
The Board of Finance back then decided that they thought money wasn't being spent appropriately in the right areas on the roads, so they mandated a road study be done. And the whole idea of the road study is that basically I give them the budget number that we're gonna get, and they tell us what roads we're gonna go do and what procedure we're gonna use to do that. Whether it's chip seal, crack seal, mill and overlay, total reconstruction, and it's broken up percentage wise by that pie chart that you saw in the front. So it takes what I want to say is the politics out of it. Years ago, that's why we were doing what we did. So the benefits of pavement management. It protects the community's investment by maximizing the lifespan of the roadway network. It provides the ability to plan ahead and predict budgetary needs, minimize costs while maximizing the value. Apply the appropriate treatment at the correct location and time, and it provides a foundation for decision making. The next page shows you a comparison between 2016 and 2022. It shows you the bottom line numbers, which haven't changed much. The rating in 2016 was a 69.67, and in 22 it was a 67.65. Now, when we started this, we were at a 54 years ago. The next page is a summary of their findings. It says based on the recent update completed in 2024 to reflect all paving improvements since the most recent round of inspections in 2021. And every year I give them the updated work list of what we've completed, and every year they update our rating. It's not a complete road study where they come out and inspect. We do that every 5 years. And the overall RSR, which is the road surface rating for Griswold town maintained roadway network, is 72.29. So we have gone up. This represents a rough increase of 4 network points over the last 3 years. The overall RSR represents a benchmark for performance measuring of the town's pavement management program moving forward. if the overall RSR were to drop in the years to come, it would be a sign that the program may need to be adjusted of funding for the program, or the needs may need to be reevaluated. So we constantly look at our procedures and processes that we use, like the chip seal and the crack seal. We get different prices. We get state bid, we get capital region bids, and we look at all those to see what we can get most for our money. So we're constantly looking to change whatever we can to try to get more done for the money we get. Repair strategies and associated unit costs were defined, and they're shown here down below. To develop the town's estimated roadway improvement cost summary. The analysis summarizes the mileage of the roadways that fall within each suggested repair category, as well as the estimated cost to complete the recommended maintenance or repair. The current improvement summary for the town's public road network is approximately $12 million based on the current market. So, you know, it shows you the rating has gone up. Below that, it shows you the categories of the roads for repair and the unit price. If you look at the unit price back to 2016, they've gone up. Not a lot, but they've gone up.
Question. If you were to do this plan, what would the estimated road service rating go up to? Can you tell you anything like that?
What we do is we project what we get in the budget. They give us a list of what we're gonna do for road work, we do it, and then they adjust the road surface rating based on that. So it's done after the work is
Actually,
completed.
it's gone.
The next page is a graph that I put together quickly. The bottom shows the funding we received over time. You can see the large spike. And then the top shows the rating of the roads over time. The reason you see that big spike in 2024, that was a year where the Board of Finance gave us an additional $250 for roads. And we received $525,000 from Eversource for the Borough Road pavings where they put the gas lines in. So that's why you see that very high number there. But you can see when you look at that, the funding we did over time and where it's dropped down. I mean, the road rating has stayed the same to a point, but then when we started to increase it over $1 million is where it's starting to gradually go up. I know it's gonna be a tough year. I know capital, the big item in capital is the roads. But I'm trying to give you an idea of where we're going. Hopefully, we can keep funding up where we need to be.
In comparison to similar towns, how are we doing?
The only town that really around here does road study analysis is Ledger. And Ledger bonded roads, and they're probably at 85%. Every year they do bond, which we've talked about, and nobody was in favor of doing bonding for roadways. My personal goal was to get to a average, which is C 75. If you look at one page, looks like this is griddled on the top. Our rating is 72.29. The next page shows the borough, when you separate it out separately, and the borough is 74.94. So I think the borough is a C, and the town is maybe a C minus.
Quite a bit in the borough this past summer.
Because of the Eversource money. That was the big influx, and, you know, we had to spend that in the borough. That was the process. So I'm not here to, I'm not here to say we have to do this, but I'm here to say that it's important with the road study. We spent the money to do the study. I know it's gonna be a tough year, but my job is to promote money for road work and infrastructure improvements. I wanted to do it separate from my operating budget, because I try to keep it separate because it's more of a capital item. I know you always don't have control over capital. Usually let capital make their own call. I'm gonna share copies of this with capital hopefully this week. I'll answer questions if I can, if you have them.
So if we look just, and I'm gonna ask you for a guess here, so you don't have to be precise. If we look at $1 million for roads, let's say we cut you 250,000. That 250,000, what's that gonna cost us next year? Just a guess, or the year after when you finally get your funding. I'm just
Well,
trying to
I
figure
mean-
out what the loss is when we keep pushing this back.
So I'm gonna go back a little further. When I first started, we were paying $52 a ton for asphalt. Right now, it's 112. It's 30 years. So over 30 years, we've doubled, let's say. So we see asphalt prices, depends on the market of the oil, the emulsion. I've seen them go up $5 a ton. I've seen them go up $1 a ton. It's hard to predict. Based on these prices, I mean, we're seeing stuff go up $2 a square yard. In, 3 years, I wouldn't be surprised with the way things are going. We see that go up $3 a square yard in 1 year. So the longer you kick it out, the less you're getting for your money.
All right, that's what I.
That's
the answer.
what it comes down to.
Anyone else? In the study, I noticed that it said that these prices were curb to curb, didn't include a number of extras.
Right.
So a lot of roads are in really bad shape.
Mhm.
By the time you get to those roads, I guess, and maybe I don't want to just pinpoint it to that, on average, year after year after year, how much extra work do you have to do above and beyond this curb to curb? And I'm going to assume that money also comes out of the paving line item.
It does. So these estimates don't include drainage. So we do upgrades as we need.
Mhm.
It could be partial repairs, it could be complete replacement of catch basins. Could be new installation, like Latham Drive, we put in 12 new basins.
So use Latham as an example. What did drainage cost you on Latham? And what would it have, and what was the overall cost of the project? So we can kind of compare. If you didn't have to do drainage, here's what it would have cost you just to pave it, but now with drainage, it costs you X.
Right. So not looking at labor. A basin, is probably about $500 per basin, so about $6,000 for basins. And about $35,000 for pipe.
And additional labor though.
Yeah, but I don't look at the labor, because I say we're getting paid no matter what we do, so I say the labor covers that. It's not contracted out, or it would be an additional cost. That's the way I look at it.
Okay.
So, we have to inspect all that before we pave, otherwise we're wasting our money. If something, we have a lot of old metal pipe that rots on the bottom and starts to collapse. We have one on Gear Road we gotta do this summer. It's stuff you have to look at, you have to inspect before you.
So just, I guess, just so that everybody knows, because I would clueless on this, what did it cost to pave Latham?
It was about $480,000.
Okay.
For pavement.
Okay.
So almost $500,000. And that's total reconstruction, so that's.
Right,
Grinding it full depth, grading it, rolling
Right.
it, paving it.
right. That's the worst case scenario right there.
But the problem is, a lot of our roads have a few issues. One, either we don't have asphalt that's 3 inches or more in thickness. If we're gonna mill and overlay, we need at least 3 inches. They have what they call a train. They can come through and they grind it up, they put it back down behind them. It spits the rocks out, and then you chip seal it. You have to have at least 3 to 4 inches to do that. So very few roads we have enough pavement to really do anything short of reclaiming. I mean, Mohegan Drive, we're gonna mill and pave this year. We tested it, we got 3 to 4 inches, so we're gonna say we can mill and pave that. A lot of the roads we have are double chip seal. They used to use 3/4 inch oil and stone. It's 2 or 3 layers of that, and it's not even asphalt. So it's hard to work with. I mean, we're making a lot of headway, don't get me wrong. Right now, I think we have a little over $2 million left in the budget. We're paving Oakville Road, Bow Lane, Mohegan Drive, Lake Road, which people know where that is, it's pretty bad.
In bad shape.
And then we're going to Sabicki and Benton Hill. That's what's on the road study. So that's about $2 million. It's every road we do now, and we reclaim it and reconstruct it, in the future, it can be milled and paved because we have the thickness. We put down 3.5 inches of asphalt. We have the 3 inches to do that mill and pave in the future, but it's over time. Unfortunately, they did what they did years ago, and that's how they made it work with the money they had, so that's what we have to deal with. Bill?
Sit down here.
I'm all set. I gotta swing back to Board of Education when I have a chance. But that's
Thank you, Todd. Gary, what was your?
I had asked for the information on the graduation, and I see that you have that up here. And what you're saying, is that like the special education students, is that why you see the overall, all students graduating going down as the years go?
Right, the number you see are all students, that we have to, that they, based on every student we have who graduates four-year cohort. But with special ed, as you can see below, we have to educate them beyond the 4 years, so that 63% is averaged in. That answers your question.
So approximately, besides taking special education students out of the equation.
Gary, where are you going with this? I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole because that really doesn't pertain to the Board of Finance. So I just
wanted to see how we were doing that.
okay, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because that really doesn't have to do with us, with the Board of Finance.
Quick answer I could give you would be, the state only asks for the 4-year all students. So obviously we'd be in the 90% if we took our special ed students out. That's what we'd be in the 90%, okay, non-specialist.
That's what I was. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Todd. The road study, is there an annual cost for that or?
There's an annual cost upgrade, once I send you a list of what we've done for the year, it's about $2,500. Each year to do that upgrade and provide me with the data and the projections for next year, July 1st start of where we're going and what we're doing. What I've asked them to do is project out the same number we received last year in the budget. And that could change if we don't receive that same funding. And I always ask them to go out 4 to 5 years so I can kind of plan on where we're going, look at those roads and see if we have to do any design or drainage so we can start to work on that ahead of time and have it ready for when the funding comes.
Looks like it's well worth the money. You guys have very good information for that.
And we are scheduled next year to do a complete, it's 5 years next year, so we have to do a complete, the whole road study, then coming and look at the roads again.
Hey, 5C, Finance Director's Monthly Report.
I give you the revenue and expenditure reports and fund balance analysis. Revenues recorded to date, we're at $34,917,594.89. That is 82.53% of budgeted revenues. No major concerns. I think we're gonna come in around what was budgeted, maybe even a little higher. Expenditures, we're at $33,196,793.68. That is 78.46% of budget expenditures. Again, we're looking into the tipping fees. We're supposed to have a meeting coming up. I'm not sure if that's been scheduled yet. But other than that, no real concerns. I gave you a listing of items currently over budget. As far as the fund balance analysis goes, I'm still projecting to be a little over 20% at the end of the year, so we're still in good shape. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, sir.
In the minutes from February 18th, it states that, the increase in tipping fees will hurt our expenditure budget, but it will help our revenue because the fees are passed on to the hauler. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, what happens is the haulers come and pick up everyone's residential trash. They bring it to the incinerator. And Scarab bills whatever town they're coming from. I think it's, I don't remember now, 62 and change, a ton. So then they send us a bill at the end of the month What we do is we send it to the two haulers. And we charge them $4 additional for administrative fees. So we charge them 66 and change per ton. So that's why our revenues will go up along with the expenditures, because we're actually making $4 a ton off fees.
Eric, last meeting, we talked about where we were potentially going to land on unadjusted budgets as presented based on the decrease in the mill rate. There has been some change because the selectmen held a meeting and did vote to restructure the motor vehicle depreciation schedule. How does that impact us on what we're gonna be looking at kind of out of the gate?
The budget right now is at, with that estimate included, we're at around 3.12 million degrees.
Okay.
Well,
And Sean, do we have final tuition revenues from you, or will we anticipate maybe as we kind of get closer, just be kind of before public hearing, of having an adjusted number? Any idea where we're landing?
Say an adjusted number.
Okay. I think that we did the same thing kind of last year. Do you anticipate it increasing? What's kind of the,
Plan to talk about that with the Board of Ed next Thursday night, and
Okay.
we'll be coming downtown, chair meeting right afterwards.
okay. Any questions for Eric? Okay, item 6, any other business? Anyone have anything? Okay, item 7, public forum. Then we're gonna move on. Item 8, adjournment.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion first and second, all in favor? We adjourn.
Oh,